Good afternoon. My name is Brad Stokes, like Christy just said. Talking about calculators today. I'd like to note first, though, that Sanford's name should also be on this slide. He's been a big pusher for this. This is based off of my thesis work on pea aphids on spring peas. The title of this, Economic Injury Levels and a Binomial Sequential Sampling Plan for 2 aphid species here. I'm going to call it MFC. I'm going to say the scientific name once. That's all you get. And the bird cherry oat aphid. And this is on spring wheat. And we applied in 2014, and we'll continue this year as well. Okay, the aphids we're talking about. Aphids are in the order Hemiptera for you non-entomologists. They're in the suborder Sternorhyncha. Sterno referring to the chest, and rhyncha referring to the nose or beak of the insect. And they're in the family Aphididae. Sorry, I've been doing a taxonomy class. Metopolophium, festucae, cerealium. That is the MFC, the invasive aphid. Ying Wu discovered this in 2010, right, Sanford? 2011. It's an invasive aphid now established in our region. The big problem with this aphid is we do not know the damage per aphid is unknown on wheat, both spring and winter wheat, as far as I know. From the work done by Ibrahim, we now know it's not a vector of BYDV or barley yellow dwarf virus. The second aphid in the study, BCOA, I know Nilsa has worked a bunch with this aphid, Rhopalosiphum padi, as well as her graduate student Laura Ingwell. This is a native aphid, readily abundant here. The damage per aphid was established decades ago. I believe it was 1980 or 81. So some subsequent studies have not been done. And it is a prominent vector of BYDV. Okay, economic injury level. This is the fun part. It's essentially the break-even point where the cost of control, which is the purchasing and applying of the insecticides, is exactly equal to the benefits of control. That would be higher yield after you control the insect. This is often expressed in terms of aphids per plant or aphids per 25 180-degree sweeps with a sweep net. And this establishes your baseline number. So you know if the spraying is profitable or not. 2 weeks ago, me and Stephen Fricke went over to Genesee, and I recently discovered how expensive these insecticides are. Anyone want to take a guess per gallon? Yeah.
I don't know, probably about 300.
Yeah, about 300. They were saying $250 a gallon. So that's pretty expensive. They're using a couple ounces per acre. Always read your label, Bill. Very important. Okay, so your economic injury level in numbers of aphids, typically per plant or sweep nets, is equal to C, which is the cost of controlling. That's purchasing and applying your insecticide, over D, that's the damage per aphid, times V, that's the value of your crop in dollars per bushel in this case. Yield potential, YP, that's your maximum yield, which would be in bushels per acre. And it's multiplied by K, your insecticide efficacy. This is the formula we use to calculate the EIL, or your break-even point. I guess I already went through that. All these you can look up if you're a grower. And as an example, they're going to change per grower. say Christy here, she's a great wheat grower. Your yield potential is what, Christy? 80 bushels per acre. So she's up there. Sanford, on the other hand, he's not a good grower. 55 bushels per acre. So these are fluctuating, they're dynamic. The point of these calculations is to make them dynamic, so they change depending on your variables. Okay, the field experiments, they were in small plots, small wheat plots and caged around a PVC cage with no CM netting. This is this really fine mesh that we use. We introduce a set number of wheat plants per cage and then introduce aphids, a known number of aphids. That's very important. Then you monitor each cage or infestation over a period of time. And the ultimate goal is establishing a wide density of aphids across your entire experiment, from very low, hopefully 0 aphids, to very high. What you would want to see is this negative relationship where relative yield is on your y-axis and numbers of aphids are on your x-axis. This can be a linear relationship, can be quadratic or exponential. And the 2014 results, I expected something like this. I got something like that. That line was about 0, so it was not helpful at all. And this is why we're going to be repeating this experiment in 2015. Binomial sequential sampling plan. Binomial means 2 choices, 2 numbers. You either spray or you don't spray, depending on the infestation level. Sequential, you're sampling random plants sequentially, one after the other. These are quick, convenient, and scientific approaches to calculating your infestation level in your field. They incorporate the EIL, and it recommends a spray action or not a spray action, or to continue sampling. And these can be made into a smartphone application. If you want to know more about that, you can ask Stephen Fricke over there, or see his poster later on. It essentially works like this, where on your x-axis you have the number of plant samples you're going to examine. We have 2 parallel lines. As you sample, it will recommend you either continue sampling, or you'll fall into that economic infestation, or you'll be in this non-economic infestation. There's a lot more equations behind this than just that. So, the advantages of both these are the ease of use for the producer. And they can be made field ready, of course. Android, Apple ready. I believe we use a mobily enabled app. What do you call that, Steve?
Yeah, mobily
Mobily enabled web app for this. The economic benefit to grower, it doesn't cost them anything to use our web pages. We do pay Steve, though, and me, so there's a cost associated with this. The precision of the research and applications is very high, depending on that line that I get from the experiments. And the ultimate goal is to quantify your pest infestation in less than 15 minutes. I typically recommend 4 to 5 samples per field, on the margins and in the center of the field. And with that, I will take any questions.
Good job, Brad. Since you did your master's thesis on something very similar, Don't you think that the economic injury level of the bird chariot aphid will be influenced by the fact if the insects are viruliferous or not? Are they carrying the virus or not? And how are you addressing that?
That was not written into this grant, but I know a great scientist that has some viruliferous Rhopalosiphum padi colonies in this room. I could incorporate that into this somehow. That is a good question, Elsa.
Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have to put the great in front of the scientist, but
Okay, Iqbal's next.
Since this was your controlled and caged experiment, what do you assume or what do you think why your result didn't went along the predicted lines? Why didn't your result went along the predicted lines?
Okay. Why didn't it work out?
This was your controlled and caged experiment, so what thing you expected went wrong?
I believe I put the experiment out too late. The plants were already heading and starting to produce their seeds. This is way too late. What we did learn from this is that aphids at this stage do not really cause any yield damage or loss. So even with negative results, you can still learn something, right, Bill?
You bet.
Am I next?
Yes.
So I have I guess a range of density question, Brad. You were pointing out that that's an important part of your design. So I don't have any concept of what's a relatively high density. Is the photo there relatively high density?
That's close. That was a picture I took over the summer. We had an English grain aphid infestation as well with my experiment, and this is what these are. A high range on a wheat plant, I would say 300, 400 would probably be a really high range, JD.
Per plant?
Per plant.
Just a question. I'm assuming that there are other regions in the world where we do know that wheat aphids are creating a lot of economic damage, and you're just trying to get a better understanding of the specific impact in this region?
Yes. That's correct.
And also, as far as we know, there's no economic injury level.
No,
Where for MFC, this invading aphid, it's sort of unknown. I mean, it's fascinating because it causes staining on the leaves when it feeds. So one of the things that we hypothesize is that on a per aphid basis, it causes more injury without the virus anyway than does bird chariot aphid. So we're pretty anxious for Brad to get the cages out at a different time this year.
hopefully much sooner.
Bradley, what happens if your actual field level of infestation falls within your continued sampling region? Is that considered economic or non-economic?
It's considered neither. The recommendation is to continue sampling. This is why in a field you want to take more than one sample.
But it seems feasible that your actual aphid density could fall within that region.
Yes. If it fell within that region 20 times, then it's non-economic, though. It's below that economic threshold line.
Good.
Okay.
Hey, Brad, I've got a question for you, and this is sort of a leading question. Based on your knowledge, new knowledge of the cost of the insecticide per acre, what would you guess the economic threshold loss would be to stimulate an input?
It's going to depend on the aphid species. It's going to be below 10 would be my expert opinion. At a certain, that's going to be at a certain stage of the wheat too. Since I put these on so late, it just didn't work out that well. I need to hit the mid to late vegetative stages with the wheat. Let the populations really get up there.
I guess that's kind of my point. There's a the aphids aren't going to cause a significant amount of damage no matter what. To cross a threshold to spray at $3 an acre is completely different than a $25 or $30 an acre return on the investment.
Yep.
There's a lot smarter people than we are sitting around crunching numbers on the return on investment on these insecticides, fungicides, and herbicides.
Yep.
That's going to have to be the last question, but Brad's going to be around all week, so have a conversation with him.